team title during All-Star Weekend in 2016. The 34-year-old Thompson, son of Lakers radio analyst Michael Thompson, would have looked good in a Lakers uniform. Thompson signed a 3-year deal with dollars worth $50 million. Apparently, Thompson thought his chances of competing for an NBA title are better with Dallas. At age 27, Simone Biles will be the oldest member of the U.S. Olympic women's gymnastics team. Biles qualified for her third Olympics. She has a combined 7 medals in the first 2. 4 of the medals are gold. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California, home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@kbla1580.com. That's advertising at kbla1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you black.
I'm Tavis Smiley, delighted to have you joined with us in this hour. What an amazing show today. We just spent an amazing hour with Katrina vanden Heuvel of The Nation magazine, trying to unpack any number of existential threats to our democracy. It ain't just Donald Trump these days. You could add to that list the U.S. Supreme Court and others, individuals and institutions for that matter. Yesterday on this program, we had Cornel West, who is a colleague of our guest in this hour, Gary Dorian. They are both at Union. Dr. West is on sabbatical right now as he runs for president. And by the way, Gary Dorian, before I get to you, and before I forget, Cornel West told me to tell you hello when you came on today and send his love in high regard. Cornel West is one of the subjects in this book that we'll talk about with Gary Dorian in this hour. But Dr. West was on this program yesterday, and he used a word that I've been holding on to for the last 24 hours about the state of our democracy, or as I call it, our experiment in democracy. The word he used, you were listening yesterday, you heard it, grim. These are grim times in our democracy, grim times. And now more than ever, we need a renewed moral vision in this country. Enter Gary Dorian, renowned social ethicist and theologian, the Reverend Gary Dorian, in fact, to discuss the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act and his latest text, the third in a trilogy. It's called A Darkly Radiant Vision. Love that title. A Darkly Radiant Vision, the Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK. And so we commence right now a conversation for the hour with the Reverend Gary Dorian about how we find our way to a renewed moral vision, as King would call it, a revolution of values in America right about now. The timing of this conversation could not be more propitious, and I'm pleased to have Gary Dorian on this program. Brother Gary, how are you today, sir?
Great. Thank you, Tavis. I'm just so grateful and honored to be on with you.
It's a great delight to have you. Let me just start broad, and we'll work our way, as we say, we'll let it do what it do. We'll let it do what it do. I don't know where this conversation is going to take us, but I know it's going to be rich because it's Gary Dorian. So let me just start with this. You heard me say a moment ago, we just had an hour conversation about this Supreme Court decision yesterday, and we were talking about the debate last Thursday and whether Biden is going to stay in or get out, how much more serious that consideration has become, whether Democrats ought to rally around him and get him across the finish line, whether they ought to dump him right now and force him off the ticket, what a open convention would look like, how fractious that would be. Donald Trump is just laughing and giggling because much of the Supreme Court that he appointed has given him almost blanket immunity. It's a grim moment, as you heard me say a moment ago. When you are, so let me just ask a broad question, as I said to start, and we'll jump from there. How are you viewing this present moment in American history?
Well, I just find it an excruciating moment. I can't think of another one like it. In the whole time that you and I have been following these events and trying to make some kind of intervention in them and being close to people like Cornell and just steering our way through what we are. Only a few months ago, these arguments were being made to the court about the supposed immunity that a president might have, and the justices were asking, are you really saying that a president could hire someone to assassinate a political opponent, or go right down the list of those things that Judge Sotomayor listed in her dissent? Mm-hmm. And it was just unbelievable. We're even listening to this. Is this really where we are? Is this what we're talking about in this country? Why are they even hearing this plea? And yet now, not only did they hear it, but now pass this decision. So it's just stunning. Just a moment to sit in.
Yeah. How do you square those two things? I'm glad you raised that. You're the first person that's raised that with me, so I want to just probe it just a second. You're right. We all recall months ago when the Supreme Court was hearing oral arguments in this case. And I went back last night just to double check my memory on this, and it turns out I was right, believe it or not. My memory isn't always perfect, but pretty good still. I went back last night, Gary Dorian, to just check my own facts and make sure that I was not misremembering. But when the Supreme Court was hearing these oral arguments, based on those questions that you just referenced, that Sonia Sotomayor raised in her dissent, the way this story was written in the press a few months ago was that the Supreme Court seems skeptical of the arguments by Trump's lawyers.
Indeed.
That was the storyline. That the Supreme Court seems skeptical. I mean, everybody was writing. I mean, everybody from the New York Times on down, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, everybody said the same thing in the story months ago, that the Supreme Court is not buying this argument by Trump's lawyers that he is immune. They seem skeptical based on the kinds of questions they were asking. And to your point, a few months later, when the decision is brought forth, as it was yesterday, we find that they really weren't that skeptical. That on a 6-3 vote, they bought it hook, line, and sinker. Furthermore, let me add, that two of the justices who should have recused themselves from even hearing the case, given their interaction with Donald Trump through their spouses, etc. Samuel Alito should not have been involved in this yesterday, and Clarence Thomas should not have been involved in it. So they refused to recuse themselves, and apparently they did not find the argument skeptical at all. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. But that is not the story that we read in the mainstream media a few months ago. When we come forward, I want to ask the Reverend Gary Dorian how he squares those two things. The way the story was reported then and what actually happened yesterday. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
When you get nachos, tacos, empanadas, spicy queso with jalapenos, Pepto-Bismol's there. Pepto-Bismol provides fast, effective relief from nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, and diarrhea. All the things that can happen unexpectedly on vacation. So before you travel, pack the Pepto. Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Go to hims.com/joy. Through HIMS, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, and the process is 100% online. To start your free online visit, go to hims.com/joy. That's HIMS.com/JOY.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley, the Reverend Gary Dorian, who is at Union in New York City. His latest text is called A Darkly Radiant Vision, the Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK. We'll work our way into that, I promise, in a moment. But Gary Dorian, since you went there, I'm just following you. What do you make of that dichotomy? The story a few months ago during oral arguments was that the Supreme Court wasn't buying the argument of Trump's lawyers, that they were skeptical. Everybody reported that. And then yesterday, they lowered the boom.
Well, certainly. There was such an historic moment. We're asking questions that have just never been asked in that forum, and they're all aware of it, and so they're kind of trotting them out in those early arguments, just in case anyone is doubtful about what it is we're talking about. But indeed, I think this court has the exuberance of power. They are now in an absolute majority position, something that some of those folks have been dreaming about for decades, and they've got a couple of folks to the right of the rest of them who are able to sort of pull it in the direction they've gone. And so we end up with, as Justice Sotomayor said, argument by argument, the majority invents immunity through brute force. They've got the force that now is able to, exact it. And so we're seeing the consequence of them not being able to wait for, some later day, say, oh, maybe are we coming on too strong? Is it too far? They might be surprised by how far they've already gone. And yeah, it's just absolutely incredible decision. And I would say that now we're going to have all this talk about what are the core acts, or what are these official acts. But they've already said any kind of contact with the Justice Department has absolute immunity. So anything that clearly falls into that rubric is already, out the door. And I think Justice Jackson's dissent is just exactly right on this point. This is the stuff we need to be protected from. It's criminal acts that are committed in our name, as though this is for us. It's for the U.S. American national interest, or some construction of it. It's criminal acts in the name of that we need to be protected by, not by what some individual might do out on the street somewhere. That's what we're left with.
The aforementioned Cornel West and I co-wrote a book that called The Rich and the Rest of Us, a Poverty Manifesto. Right. And in that book, The Rich and the Rest of Us, we talk about the various ways in which America is impoverished. And poverty is as real as rain. Poverty, income inequality, economic immobility, all very real. And yet we talked in one chapter about all the other ways that we are impoverished. And one of those poverties we detail is a poverty of imagination. A poverty of imagination. And I want to tap into your radical imagination right about now. and have you ponder for us or ponder with us what it means in this American moment to have a renewed moral vision. To quote King directly, a revolution of values. If Dr. West was right yesterday that we are in a grim moment, then talk to me as I work my way into this text about what it means in a moment like this to consider a renewed moral vision for our country, a revolution of values. Garrett Dorian.
Well, as you know, this goes straight to what becomes, for me, a Volume 3 question. What does it mean to pick up in that moment after we've just lost Dr. King? This whole trilogy of mine is, my argument is that we have this fabulous tradition that has no literature. That's actually the best tradition we have in this country, the best religion, the best tradition in terms of some kind of public activism and intellectualism within religion. That's the Black Social Gospel. We've got rows and rows and rows of books about the social gospel, but it's always that white church stuff that built the National Council of Churches and so on. And I'm not knocking that. I teach that literature and cut my teeth on it, but it always just frustrated me that there's a greater tradition that takes you to the civil rights movement that is in fact a tradition of radical imagination, of intellectualism, of involvement in what exactly is at stake in the public square in that generation, in that time. And it starts in the 1870s and goes right through the present day. As I say, it's what takes you to and through the civil rights movement. And there's virtually no literature about that as a tradition, let alone as a great one, let alone as the greatest one we have. So that was always sort of the idea of what became these 3 large volumes on the Black Social Gospel. And the first one was the founders, and the second one was the easiest one, really, because that's the familiar story about the civil rights movement, Dr. King and all the folks around him, and so on. But then for Volume 3, Darkly Radiant Vision, we start with, okay, we've lost Dr. King, now what? And it starts even with people right immediately around him. People who knew him personally, people who knew what he thought, but people who also knew what it felt like at the end. I mean, it was difficult. They had bruising arguments about, what now, what next? Should we go into electoral politics or not? Protest politics or not? What kind of protest politics? Just even knowing how deeply depressed, how exhausted Dr. King was at the end, that had an effect on him. Just the effect of losing him and being assassinated, that effect. So that's just where we start, really, with Volume 3. It was just, how do we go forward after what we've just lived through? And that's not a new question. We've been out there since the early 1970s.
Yeah.
And in fact, it is true that once you get one of the lines that are in this book, that political line whereby people say, I know Dr. King wasn't really for electoral activism, for running for office and the like. That wasn't really him. Some of them tried to tell themselves, well, he might approve of it now. He didn't in his time, but maybe he would now. You make that kind of argument. But of course, once you do make that move, make the move into electoral politics and getting elected, well, now you are in fact changing the realities on the ground. I mean, the whole question of sort of what constitutes leadership in this context makes what constitutes progress toward justice, and now defending whatever gains you've just made. That's all part and parcel of a new moment that you're in, which you've been in ever since. So I spent the first 2 chapters of this book just dealing with that kind of on the ground kind of political story. Andy Young and Jesse Jackson and all that kind of thing, before I even get to theology. Theology has to wait till the 4th chapter because, firstly, it's now a quite complicated story. And as you say, I mean, Cornell is, Cornell's in every chapter one way or another because, of course, Cornell has been in this conversation in a way that's distinct and profound and creative for his entire career.
No, there are a couple things you said I want to interrogate here quickly. The first is that in preparing for our conversation last night, I should say that correctly, in preparing last night for our conversation today, I thought about what you just laid out, that in this book, A Darkly Radiant Vision, you're picking up after King. King is gone. And as you said, the book starts out with his team wrestling with what now, what next. And to your point, we've been in that frame since the late 60s, early 70s. But the nation finds itself, interestingly, in that frame today, right? That's what we're talking about. After the debate last Thursday, after the Supreme Court decision, we're talking about in real time what now, what next for this experiment in democracy. So interestingly, the moment that we find ourselves in the nation parallels to the moment that is the subject of this third book in this trilogy, A Darkly Radiant Vision. I thought about that, number one. But number two, to your point about, your point about King and electoral politics. Clearly, King never stood for office himself. But I always am troubled by people who think that King was apolitical. I don't buy. I want to take your temperature on this. I've never bought the argument that King was apolitical, and there are a number of reasons for that. Number one, in no particular order, because those who know the story know that he went to Cleveland to campaign for Carl Stokes, who became the first black mayor of a major city. Carl Stokes hated on Dr. King the night he won, and I tell that story in my book, Death of a King. King is there in Cleveland campaigning for Carl Stokes, again, to become the first black mayor of a major city. Carl Stokes wins that night. Dr. King has a hotel room in the building where they're having the victory party. Carl Stokes goes to Dr. King's room, tells Dr. King, I'm going downstairs. It looks like we're about to be declared the victor, the winner of this race, and I want to have you come on stage with me when I make that move. Dr. King in 2024 is still waiting on Carl Stokes to come back to the room to get him, to take him on stage. King had become such a pariah at this point for coming out so forcefully against the war in Vietnam that Carl wanted his help getting elected, but he didn't want to be seen standing next to Dr. King. That's how toxic King had become. So King is not apolitical. He's campaigning for Carl Stokes, and he's not political because he was very clear and publicly clear in his statements that LBJ should not run for re-election given what he'd done in Vietnam. LBJ, of course, eventually did stand down and decided not to run again. So I'm saying all that to say, Gary, I don't buy this argument that some people make that King was altogether apolitical. That's my treatise. What's your response?
Oh, yes. I think he saw that as one pole that's just not really avoidable. That electoral politics, protest politics is something wider than just whatever happens every 2 years or every 4 years. Certainly for him, this is every day, and he's the epitome of that movement politics person and leader. But certainly, it's not like it's ever dissociated from what's happening in electoral politics. And of course, this needle is moving the whole time that he was involved. I mean, in 1960, it's not that clear yet for him whether he's going to go for Kennedy. Well, Kennedy or Nixon. That's the way it comes out. But going into that convention, that could still go in one way or another. Because indeed, that's just the situation in this country. The fact that it moved the way that it did, that if you care about civil rights, if you do, well, then that's a story that's going to move into the Democratic Party as it did in those early 1960s. Well, of course, that's what happened, and in the course of those few years, yes, Black Americans became the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, and in many ways, it's not an outcome you would have been able to see coming in the late 1950s or early 60s, certainly by 1960. But by 64, my goodness, Dr. King was deeply involved in that presidential election in a kind of ordinary sense of the term, in a way that was more direct and concrete and specific than he had expected to be. And of course, that's because he looks across the way, and it just feels like such an almost apocalyptic threat on the other side. The thought of Goldwater as president was just unthinkable to him in 64. And as you know, I mean, the protest movements did stand down in that year in order not to create trouble for LBJ that year, because he wanted to seal his victory, and that's what made that sort of fabulous year of 1965 and early 66 possible. But as you say, yes, when he comes out finally against the war in Vietnam in April of 1967, he has had that view for 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
That the war is wrong, and yet, it's not like people don't know it. He sprinkles his opposition to the war out there. People know it here and there, but of course he's not become an anti-war leader until he steps forward on April 4th, 67 at Riverside Church and gives that fabulous speech that they had to farm out to Vincent Harding and
Clarence
John
Jones,
McGuire, because none of the insiders are willing to write it.
That's
they don't want to write this thing. They're all against it, and they know what's going to come on top of him. And he got hit very, very hard for that for quite a while. But
no question about it.
For Dr. King to have, from his standpoint, he's not saying, "Oh, I played the politics right." He wasn't sure he did. He just felt, I have dealt with the contradiction of this for as long as I can stand. I can't go any longer without giving this speech. Now that we're this late in the story in April 67, and I still haven't come out in this way against the war. I've got to do that. And of course, Vincent and Harding have been trying to get him to do that for a couple of years by then.
Let me ask you. I could have started our conversation here. Let me ask you right quick. I got about a minute and a half, and we'll continue when we come forward. And we haven't even gotten yet to the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. We'll talk about that part with Gary Dorian. Believe it or not, 60 years since King and others were so critical in getting the Civil Rights Act passed. Why did you name the book A Darkly Radiant Vision? I said earlier I love the title, but why A Darkly Radiant Vision? The Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK.
Well, in 1985, there was a very popular book written by Robert Bella called Habits of the Heart. And it made a wonderful argument on one side of it, that there are 4 moral languages spoken in this country. 2 of them are very individualistic. 2 of them are more moral and social. It was basically a form of progressive communitarianism that this group of 5 white sociologists wrote up, called Habits of the Heart. And in its own way, it was a critique of Reaganism in the middle of the 1980s. And yet it was the whole thing, for as wonderful a book as it was in some ways, it was just the epitome of a certain kind of white middle-class liberalism that kind of drafts. Dr. King is a sort of its exemplar, the only figure who represents anything from the whole Black American history and story that's in this book is just Dr. King, and even he is used in a way that's really it's though he's the exemplar of some kind of the same thing, progressive white liberalism, something like that. And he protested against. Vincent Harding wrote this wonderful piece called A Darkly Radiant Vision. It was his protest against the Bella Bunch's book, Habits of the Heart, and I've held on to that and taught it my whole career since then.
And now,
because I couldn't even teach that book, I couldn't even teach it for the good parts because it just so ashamed of me what was wrong with it. But then when Dr. Harding came out with this piece, I thought, okay, now I can teach them together.
Now you know why it's called A Darkly Radiant Vision, the Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK. When we come forward, we'll talk about what America is without the Black Social Gospel. Imagine America without the Black Social Gospel. We'll talk about the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act and more on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The former Cleveland, Ohio police officer who fatally shot 12-year-old Tamir Rice, an African-American, back in 2014, has resigned from a law enforcement position in West Virginia. Grand jurors decided against indicting Timothy Lohman after he shot Rice. He was fired in 2017 when it was found that he had lied on his employment application. Lohman has found work with other municipalities since, but left those jobs due to public sentiment. California has a new law requiring bars and clubs to offer drug testing to protect customers from spiked drinks. It makes free or reasonably priced testing kits mandatory. The test kits will be in the form of test strips, stickers, straws, or other devices. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
With Staples Hot Deals, you'll find super low prices on hundreds of items for back to school. Right now, 24-pack Crayola crayons and comp books are just 50 cents each at Staples. Plus, save even more with the Easy Rewards program. In-store only offer ends 8/24, limit 20. Save big on back to school at Staples.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
NBA sources claim LeBron made a phone call to Klay Thompson to ask him to consider signing with the Lakers as a free agent. Thompson appreciated LeBron's gesture, but he chose the Dallas Mavericks, ending a spectacular 13-year career with the Golden State Warriors. 4 NBA championships, 6 NBA finals, 5 All-Star appearances, and 1 3-point shooting title during All-Star Weekend in 2016. The 34-year-old Thompson, son of Lakers radio analyst Michael Thompson, would have looked good in a Lakers uniform. Thompson signed a 3-year deal with Dallas worth $50 million. Apparently, Thompson thought his chances of competing for an NBA title are better with Dallas. At age 27, Simone Biles will be the oldest member of the U.S. Olympic women's gymnastics team. Biles qualified for her 3rd Olympics. She has a combined 7 medals in the first 2. 4 of the medals are gold. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Linking social justice and climate justice all year long. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what part politics play in our lives.
Questions about black voters, their disengagement, lack of information, and support or lack thereof for Democratic candidates have once again taken center stage as Democrats, Republicans, and independent candidates compete for this critical voting bloc. Will black voters abandon Democrats in this election, move historic numbers of votes toward the Republican nominee, or will they continue a decades-long trend of overperforming for Democratic candidates up and down the ballot? The stakes have never been higher for black America. Tune in to KBLA's new show, The Black Pack, hosted by veteran political strategist Adrian Shropshire, every Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. for a breakdown of the issues, rhetoric, polling, and more this election year. It's The Black Pack with Adrian Shropshire, Fridays from 4 to 6 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey guys, do you want male performance in the bedroom and do you want it now? Get it in 47 seconds or less. For the first time, you can have instant male enhancement. Introducing Nox 47, the topical male enhancement that works in 47 seconds or less. Satisfaction guaranteed. Finally, after years of scientific research, our proprietary formula will allow you to perform in the bedroom like never before. Just imagine that little blue pill on steroids. No reason to settle and wait when you can get instant performance now. Forget about pills and potions that make you wait hours or up to 30 days to work. That's yesterday's news. Nox 47 is brand new. the hottest thing for men. And you don't need a prescription. Call now and get your free supply for a limited time.
To find out how to get Knox 47 for free, call now. 800-617-1621. That's 800-617-1621. Free bottles for limited time. Call 800-617-1621. That's 800-617-1621.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley in conversation with the Reverend Gary Dorian, who is a renowned social ethicist and theologian. His latest text is called A Darkly Radiant Vision, the Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK. It is the final book in a trilogy of books, and we're honored to have Gary Dorian on to talk about that and the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. We'll get to that. We've been talking about how in this particular moment of American history, this unique moment, this bizarre moment, this grim moment, we need a renewed moral vision, what King would call a revolution of values. We started this program today with all kinds of breaking news. There is more breaking news. In case you missed it, we mentioned earlier, relative to our program yesterday, in a conversation we had with Kevin Sharp, former federal judge, who is the attorney for Leonard Peltier, our Native American brother who has been in prison for almost 50 years. We were hopeful yesterday that news would come soon that he would be given parole at 80 years of age, compassionate release. He was denied parole earlier today. We commenced our program with that breaking news about Leonard Peltier and discussed it with Katrina Vanden Heuvel of The Nation magazine in our first hour. We also mentioned earlier in today's program, in case you missed it, that the DA, Alvin Bragg, who was successful in getting Trump convicted on 34 counts in the Stormy Daniels hush money case, Alvin Bragg has announced that they will push beyond July the 11th in the sentencing of Donald Trump. It will not happen. He will not be sentenced. For all of you who are waiting to see that, see him back in court and maybe in an orange jumpsuit, not so fast. He is not going to be sentenced now on July the 11th, because the DA and his team want to better understand how this decision yesterday by the U.S. Supreme Court on Trump's immunity, for that matter, immunity for any president, but starting with Trump in this regard, they want to see how that decision will impact the conviction of Donald Trump. So he will not be sentenced on July 11th. That will be delayed. And then we share with you the news today that Rudy Giuliani has been disbarred from ever practicing law again in the Empire State, the state of New York. So all three of those stories were breaking around the time that I came on the air. And now there is more breaking news. Representative Lloyd Doggett, Democrat of Texas, becomes the first sitting Democrat to publicly call for Joe Biden to step down as the party's nominee. We shall see in the hours and days ahead whether or not this will be a stream, slow or not so slow. But Lloyd Doggett is the first to say that he should make the painful and difficult decision to withdraw. Those are his words. But he becomes the first Democrat in the House or the Senate to publicly call for his party's leader to step down as the nominee in this year's presidential election. So there you have it. Lloyd Doggett, the first one out. We will see if he's out there by himself or whether others will join him. But that is news that a sitting Democrat has now called for his party's presumptive nominee, even as the DNC is moving to hasten his official confirmation as the party's nominee, not in August, but in July. They want to move more swiftly on that and get that behind them. But we will see if other Democrats at the federal level certainly start to join Lloyd Doggett, asking for their leader to step down. You'll recall, for those who are old enough, the last time something even similar to this happened, Ted Kennedy made the tough decision to run against Jimmy Carter because there were many suggesting that Carter should stand down. After a pretty tumultuous first term, he only had one term, of course. Ted Kennedy made the difficult decision to run against Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter spanked him. He got beat pretty badly in that primary, but Jimmy Carter was so pummeled in that primary that Ronald Reagan came later and just cleaned his clock. The rest, as they say, is history. Back to our conversation now with Gary Dorian about this particular and unique moment in American history and this call that many of us are trying to be more clarion about for a revolution of values in this particular moment. Gary, imagine for me, if you will, American history without the impact of the black social gospel that you write about in this trilogy. What does America look like without our presence, without our participation, without the influence of the black social gospel?
Wow. To me, it's unthinkable. If you don't have a movement that asks the new abolition question in the 1880s, says what would a new abolition even be now? Now that we've gotten through the 14th and 15th Amendments, and they've barely gotten through, and now you got movements to take them away and to freeze it, and this mania of lynching going on, and all that pushed, that ended up creating this new abolitionist movement it does become finally the black social gospel, and all organizations that tried to succeed and didn't, the Niagara Movement and the Afro-American League and so on, and finally you get a protest organization that doesn't fail, that does take off, and of course that's the NAACP. To try to imagine what kind of a country this is if you don't have all of that, everything just referenced, everything in the orbit of what came. To me, that's everything that is saving, that's holding on, that's actually believing in this vision that this country could be a liberal democracy, that it could hold fast to all the rights of liberalism, that is, all individuals that have rights by virtue of being children of God, having a sacred dignity, and democracy, that we have these rights as a kind of collective self-determination, and then putting them together, which is what's called progressivism. That's what progressivism is liberalism and democracy kind of fused together as a political movement. And the soul of it always was this sort of tradition of black Americans and their white allies, coming together, and the NAACP and organizations like it, in order to make this country at least try to live up to its rhetoric about what kind of a place it is, at least what it's trying to be. And it didn't even in formal terms, doesn't become a racial democracy until you have a Civil Rights Bill and a Voting Rights Act in the mid-1960s. But at least, there's an aspiration that's, yes, of course, this is what America is about. We haven't done it, but it's not total hypocrisy. We're trying to get there.
What do you make? What do you make of the fact? You made this point earlier. What do you make of the fact? And I'm glad we are all blessed. We are all the better for this trilogy that you've written, and this is the third one: A Darkly Radiant Vision, the Black Social Gospel, in the Shadow of MLK, written by Union Professor Gary Dorian. What do you make of the fact, as you mentioned earlier, that for a movement that is so foundational, a movement that is so fundamental, a movement that is so central to the writing of American history, what do you make of the fact that until you engaged the effort to write this trilogy, it had not been written about in the way that it has now? Why that? I'm not naive in asking this, but why that historical oversight for all those in your field or in broader fields who could have done this work and witnessed?
Yes, well, for years there were conventions in this field. That the first one was deadly. It was that there were only a handful of people in black churches who had something like a social gospel argument that the churches must be involved in struggles for justice. The argument was, there were just a handful. So, and they got co-opted anyway into this kind of white American story, just kind of liberalism. So don't go there. And people that I love and admire made that argument for years, but it had the effect of just screening out all those pastors who were in the orbit of W.B. Du Bois. I mean, we've heard about Du Bois, but all these folks around him kind of made this what it was get screened out when not even interested in what was the social gospel in black churches, what was going on in the AME Church and AME Zion and the National Baptist Convention that ends up creating something we do know about, which is Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement and all of that. So that was the first thing, just this argument that there just weren't enough, which was false. And yet people said it over and over again. Oh, it's just a handful of people. And then they also said, oh, the social gospel, that's just a white thing, right? That's just white churches. Well, except it isn't. You know, that's not what Reverend Ransom said. Reverend Ransom talked about the social gospel his entire career, and Richard Wright Jr. and William Simmons, and, you know, I could go on. It's just all these people who, you know, they just, it's as though they're being erased when you just say, no. And the white social gospel is just white.
Nope.
And there were others, you know, arguments of that kind that just became convention to just screen it out. Just say, don't look there.
I'm glad that Gary Dorian assigned himself to do the work that nobody had done, to really put a lens on the impact of the black social gospel in this country. The third book in this trilogy is called A Darkly Radiant Vision. More about that and more about 60 years since the passage of the Civil Rights Act when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Happy anniversary, KBLA!
KBLA Talk 1580 is now celebrating 3 years of amplifying our voice and uplifting our community. We deeply appreciate your support of this radio station and will always do our level best to earn your support. Here's to many more years of loving and serving our community. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
I know it's gonna happen without you.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1904 $20 Gold Liberty coins have been found. These gorgeous 1904p gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 500 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling this secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you can own a piece of the hoard. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1904 Gold Liberty struck at the iconic Philadelphia Mint. With limited availability, you must call now. These 1904 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition with brilliant luster. That is 120 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-973-3083. Call now and you'll receive a free bonus, a $75 value free with every order. Call 1-800-973-3083 now to secure your 1904p $20 Gold Liberty coins before they sell out. That's 1-800-973-3083.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Gary Dorian. It's one of those days. The breaking news just doesn't stop. News has broken that somebody always whispers, right? It always whispers. It's going to get out eventually. President Joe Biden, we are told, is planning a call tomorrow, a video call with Democratic governors to try to tamp down growing concerns about his ability to serve a second term following that devastating debate performance last Thursday. You heard me say moments ago, if you were listening, that Lloyd Doggett out of Texas, Democrat, is the first sitting Democrat in the House or Senate to call for the president to step down. And the White House, I shouldn't say the White House, in this instance, the campaign, the Biden campaign is concerned that they don't want the dam to break. If the dam breaks and other Democrats start calling for him to step down, you got a problem. Lloyd Doggett is the first. And so Joe Biden, we are told now, I'm reading breaking news from, who is this? NBC is reporting this story, that the president will have a video call tomorrow with all Democratic governors to try to keep them in line and not have, again, the dam break and people start calling for him to step aside. That would not be good for the president. So he's going into overdrive tomorrow, we are told, trying to get them to hold steady, rock steady with him. But again, that's the news from NBC right now, that there'll be a call tomorrow with Democratic governors, with the president, trying to again keep them aligned with him in this campaign. When we come forward, sorry for that breaking news. I appreciate Gary Dorian's patience, but this stuff is coming faster than I can keep up with. Yeah. When we come forward, in our remaining moments with Gary Dorian, we'll talk about a couple other things before I lose him at the top of the hour. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in 1 wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Again, my apologies to Gary Dorian for all this breaking news on today's program, but we've had a spirited and insightful conversation in this hour about his book, A Darkly Radiant Vision, The Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK, and I've got 5 minutes left. I want to cover a bit more ground here. Gary, for you, how do you read that in this particular American moment, and I'm asking it broadly, unapologetically, and deliberately, in this American moment, how do you read that we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act?
Well, there's what's politically efficacious and there's what's right. I think if you're involved in politics, you have to care about efficacy. I mean, politics is a struggle for power and then holding on to it and using it creatively and justly. And so, of course, you have to care about what actually works. You have to be sort of smart about being involved with what choices you're making and so on when you're in politics. So I always sort of grant that. And I think that is always the case. And yet, as Dr. King always said, it's always time to do. There's always time to do right.
Mm-hmm.
It is always time to be in the right, to serve the cause of righteousness, which is a higher calling. You know, Dr. King, it dragged the movement to Chicago. Nobody wanted to go, and people made very good arguments about why they shouldn't go to Chicago. It's too northern, alien. Daley's mayor. We'll get beaten up there. It'll be a failure. No, he had to take the movement north. And 2 years later, he's got to come out against the war, as we talked about earlier. He just couldn't live with himself if he didn't. And people made very powerful arguments about why he shouldn't do it and why he would squander his authority in the civil rights movement if he becomes an anti-war leader. And he just said, no, I can't stand not to be in the right about this issue at this time. And so he took the higher road. And then at the end, he dragged the entire movement into the Poor People's Campaign. They didn't want to go. Everybody around him was against the Poor People's Campaign, and they had bruising arguments about it. And yet and King admitted, he said, he didn't necessarily have all the political angles figured. Maybe some of his lieutenants, Bayard Rustin and these people, maybe they were right about the politics, that it didn't quite line out. Yeah. And yet King knew what he needed to be about and with whom he needed to be at that point. And I just think that is always that holds me. Yeah. That difference in just finding the right in this search of what's just.
Yep. Let me close with this. I got about 90 seconds left here. Just a quick 90 seconds. To your mind, and given all the work you've done in this trilogy, which we are grateful for, what is the future in this democracy of the Black social gospel?
I did the whole thing so that I lined it out such that I ended up getting to William Barber and Stacey Blackman.
Yes.
And the reason for that was because although there's a lot of theological arguments and ideology and all manner of stuff that you have to get into, postmodernism and post-structuralism, all these issues that you have to get into in our time, having to do with black theology and the like, I wanted to finish with two figures who could have been in any generation of any part of this trilogy, who are just so quintessential to what this Black social gospel tradition has been morally, spiritually, religiously for its entire history, and without any of the kind of ideological or philosophical or mishigas, right? Because those are two figures you don't associate with a political party or ideology or anything particular. It's just the gospel in action, and that's. So I finished the trilogy with them just to say there is a through line. There's all this stuff we have to talk about, but there is a through line all the way.
There's a
perfectly represented.
Nope, there's a through line, and the struggle continues. And we're just honored on this program to have had and to have as regular guest some of the persons that are included in this trilogy. Cornel West was here yesterday. Last week, William Barber was here in advance of the big poverty march last week in Washington. Not that this audience needs a reminder, but I'm doing my best to bring you the thought leaders, the opinion makers, the influences that you need to be exposed to, that you need to hear from. It's my great honor, and I'm humbled to do it every single day. Gary Dorian has been our guest in this hour. His book is called A Darkly Radiant Vision, The Black Social Gospel in the Shadow of MLK. Gary, congrats on the text. Thank you for this conversation. All the best to you, my friend.
Thank you, Tavis. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, sir. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The former Cleveland, Ohio police officer who fatally shot 12